Hello everybody, Gisele Grenier here. In this video lesson, I'm going to be showing you my way of using the DecoArt Traditions Watercolor medium. What it does is it turns the Traditions acrylics into a watercolor paint. Now it's not a true watercolor, the kind that you find already made, but it's the next closest thing. So for more information on like complete technical specs and all that stuff, go to the DecoArt website to get information on that. So what I've got is I've got a little piece of 140-pound watercolor paper, and I left the stamp in here, Langdon stamp here. And the colors I'm going to be using will be Hansa Yellow Light, quinacridone violet, red violet, and ultramarine blue. And I put them here. This is the quinacridone violet over here. So I'm going to bring that over. And what we're going to do, or what I'm going to do, is I'm going to take a palette knife, and basically what you want to do is add the medium as a one-to-one mixture, and it's a gooey mixture, and what it reminds me of is honey. Now I don't know exactly how DecoArt makes this stuff, they have proprietary formula, but this is just now another product that I do not have to buy. I do have watercolors that I've used especially for plein air painting, and so now I can make it myself. Now I've used their watercolor medium before, and I went for a period of I didn't use it for the longest time because watercolors just wasn't into it. And what you want to do is ideally is you mix this into like a palette well. For me, this is where it's like not a true watercolor. For me, I find that the mixtures are best when made fresh. You know, with traditional watercolors, you can leave them in the pan and just reconstitute them with water. I have done that with these as well, but I find that they just seem to work much nicer when made fresh. So that's why I make them in such small batches. So just mix that up. And I'm going to be using a super soft brush for this technique, or it's not really I'm not doing a full painting, it's just more of a demonstration. You can see when you're working in a watercolor well that everything is more contained. I'm going to spray some water. I'm going to put about 2 sprays in each, and I've got a watercolor brush, and this is now where you really want to take advantage of a well. So let's see what happens. Oh, and of course, then the typical thing is you can wet your paper, you can do it dry. It's up to you how you want to do this. I like using these types of products in a mixed media fashion where I get drips and stuff, not for formal painting. Okay, so it does still bloom. Let me get a bit of a close-up. And then I can still spray. And put a bit more water. Whoops, I just sprayed right into my face. Let's see if we can get that to run. Yeah, see, it works same way. It blooms right out. And you got the nice transparency. I like that. See, it's following everything along. And again, with watercolors, you just rinse, 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 rinse. So I can go in between and just before I even get to touching the edges is to stop. Because if you overwork it, what happens with yellow and quinacridone violet, you get some funky mixtures. Let's get some blue. The blue is going to turn green. Let's tilt that. Oh, I like that. Look at that. And let's go with some red violet. The red violet seems to be a little bit more gritty. I can see the pigment. Now that's something that happens naturally. It's not because of the meat. It's just something that happens naturally. It gets a bit gritty. Now this is where I like to really play with the mediums. I just lay some paint up here. Tilt it, And you get some really interesting effects. Then I can take some blue and go on the other side. And whatever technique you use, that's up to you. I just love the effects. And when it dries, it has some nice edges to it. You see how it blooms? It looks like an underwater thing with stuff coming out from the ground. But yeah, you can see the quinacridone, this is the quinacridone violet. It's really gritty. So you can just play with it. But I've got palettes like traditional watercolors that have dried gritty that way as well. So it's just something that naturally happens. It depends on, I guess, the brand and the actual pigment being used. So now that I'm putting yellow on top, because it's like a watercolor medium and it's water it reconstitutes itself, it's turning green. And then from here, I mean, you can do the same thing. You can use a heat gun to dry it, let it dry naturally to get some really nice hard edges. I'm going to dry part of it naturally and the other part with the heat gun, and let's see what happens. All right, so you can see where it dried naturally, where it had some nice hard edges there, and it's still a little bit wet, but I thought the background was really cool. I'm going to show you something else you can do with this. Still a little bit damp, but you've got some really interesting looks. So that you can see where the yellow mixed over with the green, it kind of, or the blue, it kind of made a kind of yucky a yucky mixture. One other thing that you can do, which I like doing, is that you can just take your paper and just put it on top to get some really, really, really pretty effects. Also, one thing I forgot to tell you, make sure that you have water that's only had watercolor medium in it, or the watercolors in it. My bucket has some acrylic dirt, and look how grungy this is looking. But either way, I can still take that, push that in there, and just get some really interesting, it's just by dragging. And if you let it dry naturally, it's going to look just like that. I like that. I'm going to leave that there. And let's just fill that up. And then we can spray with a bit more water. And let's tilt that. There we go. There we are. What do you think of that? So I hope this quick demonstration gives you some idea on how to use the DecoArt Traditions Watercolor medium. It's endless. And I'm going to be doing a lot more tutorials showing these watercolor techniques, from doing a lot of background techniques to using other things in addition to the watercolor mediums, and then creating some small art just to get you guys making something every day. All right, so as usual, if you're watching this from a YouTube channel, click in the description below to head on over to the Facebook group, because that's where I'm hanging out. And my question to you is do you use watercolors in your art? I'm primarily more interested in the mixed media things, like not formal fine art painting, but do you use watercolors with your art? And if so, what do you use? Do you have a favorite brand? Do you have a favorite technique? If you've never used watercolors, is this something you might want to try without investing a whole ton of money into buying watercolors, by just using a watercolor medium to get something that's just as good? Alrighty, so share in the comments below. I'm going to clean up now and get ready for my next project. So until I see you next time, stay inspired.